I'm back. Finally onto some another reactions. Oh, can you guys see me? I'm trying to get my camera straight on my computer. I got it on charger. It needs to be charged. But yeah. Hopefully it works. Oops. Okay. So I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I've seen this video before, but I want to watch it again with you guys. So I know about this case. Heard about it for I think it was in 2019, I think, when I first heard about this. I went to look at some random, I don't know what I was doing, but I came across this family channel, and first I noticed a picture on some type of website, and at the bottom it said click here to see what happens next, and I clicked it and I saw a boy hugging a police officer. And I was like, that picture is kind of, I didn't know what was going on, but I just saw the little boy crying while he was hugging the police officer. But I was like, what happened? What made him cry? But I'm not gonna spoil it for you guys because some of you guys probably never heard this yet from this video yet, so I'm not gonna spoil it. But I'm just gonna say it's a family channel. But make sure to subscribe, like, and comment if you can or not. But anyways, let's do this. It's been a really long time since I done reactions. It's been 2 months since I done reactions. And I was just dealing with a lot. Too busy. But now here I am, so let's get started.
I'm very concerned for these kids. I just can't let this go any longer. Those kids, I think, have been very
Chances are, when you think of a YouTube family channel, you picture something along the lines of this.
What's good, YouTube? You already know what it is. Hey, what's up, Team DO5?
These overproduced videos have become the norm in the realm of family-centric content, garnering an equal amount of both fans and critics alike, with some of the main criticisms across the board being exploitation and manipulation. The idea that these parents paint themselves as having these perfect families, when in reality they primarily view their children through the lens of content creation, oftentimes to their detriment.
So if you could pray for us, we appreciate it. I love you guys. Come here, come closer for the video, come closer. Come closer! Act like you're crying. Really quick.
I am crying.
Go like this.
No, Mom, I'm not just usually crying.
No, I know, but go like this for the video.
With their glaring motivation being to make obscene amounts of money and gain worldwide fame. But if you look deeper beneath the mansions, fancy cars, and millions of subscribers, you'll find that most family channels here on YouTube actually look something more like this. Wholesome moments captured by parents not as a way to make money or gain fame, but to immortalize memories that otherwise might someday be forgotten. With these videos often accounting for some of the most wholesome content on this whole site. But as with everything in our world, there are always outliers, and buried within these perfectly inconspicuous accounts lies one page in particular whose backstory is so evil that it...
Sorry to pause it, but I also gotta say I also watched some of the videos of that family that he just showed, and it was very, very strange. How can I put this? Off the top, you would just think it's just a regular channel, like kids dancing. But once you look deep into what happened, it will have you like creeped out.
Can only be described as one of YouTube's most disturbed family channels.
Jennifer Hart, what do we know about it?
We weren't duped. That love was a fake. They loved their children.
I also looked on cases of this.
Before we get into today's case, I want to first thank our sponsor, Helix Sleep. Helix Sleep is a premium mattress company that offers personalized beds to fit your specific sleeping needs. By using their Helix Sleep quiz, which takes into account what kind of sleeper you are and what kind of mattress you prefer, before pairing you with a mattress of your dreams. At first, I was a bit skeptical about buying a mattress online and not being able to test it in person, but I actually did take the Helix Sleep quiz personal YouTube channel, using the account for browsing and liking videos, though never really having time to upload her own. Just 2 years prior, in 2006, Jen and her soon-to-be wife Sarah had adopted 3 children, Abigail, Hannah, and Marquise. And though taking on this many kids at once seemed to be a daunting task, the Harts actually embraced the challenge, loving it so much that just 2 years later, in 2008, they would adopt 3 more children, Sierra, Devante, and Jeremiah. To add the cherry on top of their newly formed family, the couple would tie the knot in 2009, and in the span of just 3 years, these college sweethearts had become the married mothers of 6. Taking all this into account, it makes sense why Jen wouldn't have the free time to post on her channel, though this would eventually change by the end of 2011, when her very first video would go live.
I also got this big heart for Valentine's. I got it from...
This wholesome clip would kick off a rather consistent streak of uploads throughout the following year, with each having a focus on Jen's children, and specifically the many adventures that they shared. In some clips, we see the kids dancing at music festivals, or exploring the wilderness on a group hike.
How about that?
No matter what, they always seemed to be out doing fun and interesting things, and they always had big smiles on their faces, making it seem apparent that the Harts were in fact a happy family. But not just that, they also clearly had strong morals as well, with these festivals that they often attended always being themed around the idea of love and inclusivity. At one point, they even uploaded a performance featuring 4 of the children, with lyrics further asserting their desire to make the world a more unified place.
This is a place where all relations bring celebration to meditation, giving thanks for all creation.
All in all, it's a rather touching account, with one of the younger sons, Devante, clearly being the star of the show, as the camera always seemed to be on him, with the young boy even having a few solo performances on the channel. And though I'm sure they'd never admit it at the time, it's not hard to tell that he was the clear favorite of the bunch. But most noteworthy for now is that in multiple videos he's seen donning a sign that reads, "Free Hugs." Devante would wear this to many of the family's public outings, and in turn attract a large amount of attention that Jen would then film and publish on her social media pages, which wasn't exclusive to just YouTube, as she was even more active across her Facebook page, posting pictures and stories about her children, including multiple photos of the infamous Free Hugs sign, a sign that was about to thrust the family into the public eye for the very first time.
I mean, that's
There is growing outrage tonight after an unarmed African-American teenager was shot and killed by police in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson, Missouri.
Following the killing of Michael Brown Jr., a rally was held in Portland, Oregon, opposing racial injustice. And for the Hart family, this call for unity fit perfectly with their perceived beliefs. So Sarah and Jen took the children to the protest, where Devante would again wear his signature sign, leading to this moment being captured.
Okay, so this is the Pacific photo that I saw way back in 2019. Was it 2019? I think it was. But this is the photo on a different type of website. I don't know what website was. I don't know what I was doing on the computer, but I saw this picture way at the bottom of the website when I was going down, searching through the website, and I saw this photo, and it was saying something about click here to see what happens next.
Cameras. It was an incredibly inspiring and optimistic picture that would immediately be shared all across the world, with most of us having probably seen this at some point in our lives, whether we remember it or not. And not only did it represent hope for so many across the country, it also perfectly encapsulated the message that the Harts were trying to send. They clearly wanted to be perceived as this loving family who stood firmly against hate, which, just based on their content, they truly seemed to be, despite the fact that it was all nothing more than a facade. Across Jen's Facebook page, she mentions numerous times that Abigail, Hannah, and Marquise were her and Sarah's first children, even saying how Abigail was the first of her children that she ever held in her arms, adding that that was the moment she became a mother. And as sweet as these words are, they technically aren't completely true. In reality, 1 full year before Jen and Sarah adopted their first group of children, they had actually fostered another child, a teenage girl named Lee. Together, the three lived peacefully for around 6 months with no real issues, though around the end of this time, something seemingly switched within the mothers, and for Jen specifically. Suddenly, they grew cold towards their new child, often picking fights or even just ignoring her for days on end. They also started to constantly complain to friends about having to take care of her, and they didn't seem to be taking their roles as mothers very seriously. At one point, they had remarked to friends that they had caught Lee on numerous occasions rummaging through the trash and looking for food, which further added to this strange, newfound tension within the household. Despite this fighting, however, the mothers would eventually agree that Lee would be able to stay with them until she was 18, also adding that she was going to have to take on the role of being a big sister, as they were planning on adopting 3 children. And though they had their rocky moments, Lee was just relieved that she had a place to stay. However, just 1 week after meeting what would become their first group of adopted kids, Jen and Sarah would drop Lee off at her standard therapy appointment and never return. Lee was obviously devastated by their abandonment, but perhaps most hurtful of all was the fact that Jen and Sarah never spoke to or even about Lee ever again, immediately moving on to their new children and parading their loving household all over social media, while essentially rewriting Lee out of their family's history. This treatment of their first foster child immediately calls into question the online persona of the Hart family, as there was nothing loving about the way they left Lee. But on this note, you might be wondering, why would they even have to sell an online persona at all? Looking at the aforementioned popular family channels, there's a very clear reason why they manipulate their audience: money. This type of content is some of the most lucrative on all of YouTube, and given these parents' desperation for the limelight and wealth, they would do just about anything for it, including exploiting their kids and manipulating their audience. But just looking at Jen's channel, well, it's obvious that this was never going to make her wealthy and famous. But despite this, these mothers did actually have a good reason to put on this facade, as they weren't aiming to manipulate the entire world, but instead, they were merely trying to manipulate those around them. In 2008, one of the Hart children, Hannah, was stopped by her teacher after noticing a large bruise on the young girl's arm. And when questioned about how she had gotten it, Hannah would admit that her mother, Jen, had struck her with a belt. This incident would be reported to police, with teachers adding that Hannah also had been having bizarre issues with food, as she was caught stealing snacks from other classmates and taking food from the trash, just like Lee had done years before. Though immediately after being questioned about this, Jen would pull all of her children out of school and have them spend the remainder of the year being homeschooled, with the case being closed soon after. The following year, the Hart children would be allowed to return to school, seemingly when Jen thought they were in the clear. However, at the end of 2010, an eerily similar instance would occur. One school day, Abigail Hart would complain to one of her teachers of having pain in her stomach area, and when asked exactly where it hurt, she said that she had owies on her stomach and back, before adding, "Mom hit me." Again, this incident would be investigated by police, who this time would interview each of the Hart children separately, which is where Abigail would admit that her mother had held her head under cold water before striking her with a closed fist, and all because she had supposedly stolen a penny. On top of this, the other kids would explain how their mothers often hit them as well, and rarely allowed them to eat. Sarah would go on to deny these allegations of neglect, but she would admit to having hit Abigail, a confession that led to her being arrested for domestic abuse and eventually spending 90 days in prison. Though there are some discrepancies here with this story, as some have reported that Abigail had actually said that it was Jen who had hit her.
Actually, in my opinion, they both should have been arrested instead of like Jen. They should have like both been arrested. That's where they messed up at. In my opinion, that's where the police messed up at. They both should have like been arrested.
And that Sarah was merely taking the fall for her. But either way, Sarah would serve her sentence in April of 2011. Things didn't stop there, however, as after Sarah's release, Hannah Hart would go to the nurse's office and begin begging for food, claiming that her parents were again refusing to feed her and that she hadn't eaten all day. In response, Sarah claimed that she was merely playing the quote-unquote food card and proceeded to immediately pull all of the kids out of school once again, to which this time they would never return, as the family packed their bags and moved from Minnesota to Oregon practically overnight. And conveniently enough, it was right after this move that Jen started her consistent posting across social media, portraying their family as picture perfect. This channel was never made to make money or to make the family famous, but just based on the timing alone and their hyperfixation on peace, immediately following all of these horrible accusations, I don't think it's crazy to assume that these videos were uploaded in an attempt to repair the family's image, and even to potentially thwart criticism or investigation into their alleged abuse. I mean, the children are quite literally shown in one video singing the phrase, "We are so provided for," over and over again, conveniently right after their parents were questioned about neglecting their kids.
We are so provided for. We are so provided for.
And this isn't merely speculation either. These parents had a legitimate history of abuse, both proven and alleged. Plus, between the multiple instances of children desperately rummaging through the garbage for food, and the claims that they were never fed, made this family truly seem like a nightmare. And based on this, realistically, no one would or should view them as a model family. Yet that's exactly what they were to friends and family. In fact, one close friend would later state that everyone was envious of them. They were the perfect people with the perfect kids. And this is in large part due to their posting on social media, making it clear that this online facade was in fact working, despite the fact that behind the scenes, the horrors within their home were only getting worse. Having been aware of the family's sudden and suspicious move, authorities would launch an investigation into the Harts, revealing just how controlling the mothers were. In the home, the children were not allowed to speak unless they raised their hands. They were not allowed to wish each other happy birthday, and they were not allowed to laugh at the dinner table. A stark contrast to the household that Jen spoke of on her Facebook page, where all the kids have an equal voice. On top of this, the children were also severely underfed, as the two mothers used food as a means of further controlling them, thus explaining why they were always hungry at school. And if you look back at the videos on Jen's channel, you start to realize that the kids are incredibly skinny, and they appear far younger than their actual ages, with some viewers even pointing out that the animals seemed better fed than the actual kids themselves. But despite these findings and the history of abuse, police would eventually choose not to press any charges. And one interesting note here is that the investigation lasted through the bulk of 2012, which was the same time that Jen just so happened to be the most active on her YouTube channel, just further adding to the theory that this page was designed to distract from their dark history. But now, with the police at least for the moment off their trail, the abuse only continued. In 2017, the Hart family would move to the state of Washington, where one night at 1:30 a.m., their next-door neighbor would receive a knock at the door. Standing there was Hannah Hart, the consistent whistleblower of her parents' abuse, who had jumped from her second-story bedroom to escape her house before telling the neighbor, "Don't make me go back. They are racists and they abuse us." Moments later, Sarah and Jen grabbed the child and brought her back home. Upon being questioned by the neighbor, Sarah claimed that Hannah was lying and that her behavior was due to her being a drug baby, an excuse that failed to work, as the neighbors would still end up calling the police.
Since she's told me about it, I just can't live with it. I'm very concerned for these kids. I just can't let this go any longer. Those kids, I think, is in very serious danger.
Only to be immediately brushed off, with a patrol car never being sent out. From that moment on, however, these same neighbors, the DeKalbs, kept a watchful eye over the family, noticing their bizarre patterns and mistreatment of the children. And before long, another one of the kids would come to them for help. This time it was Devante, who would stop by to ask for food, which he soon began doing on a daily basis, sometimes visiting as many as 3 times a day, while also subtly mentioning that they were all being abused and that they desperately needed help. And having finally heard enough, the DeKalbs again called 911, which prompted an immediate response from authorities, with the Department of Social and Health Services launching an investigation into the family. On March 23, 2018, the agency would stop by the Hart house and ring the doorbell, though they received no answer. 3 days later, on the 26th, they would arrive once again, garnering the same results. This time noticing that a stone wall on the driveway had seemingly been destroyed, with tire marks leading up to it, insinuating that the Harts had left in a hurry, as by that point, it was already too late. Sarah and Jen were obsessed with control, so much so that they would starve their children to more easily manipulate them, and their desire for control branched past their home, as they wanted to shape the public's opinion on the family by using social media to spread their lies and erase their history. But with their own children breaking free and exposing them over and over again, and criminal charges now likely looming in the distance, they began to realize that this control was slipping away, and they couldn't bear the thought of it. So the day after the Department of Health and Services had gone to their home, Sarah and Jen would load their children in their vehicle and begin a road trip to California. And while driving on State Highway 1, Jen would pull the vehicle off the road towards a scenic overwatch, bring the vehicle to a complete stop, and then slam on the gas, driving the car directly off a 100-foot cliff into the rocky waters below, the result of which leaving no survivors. Initially, those close to the family swore up and down that this had to be an accident, as after all, they were the primary targets of the Hart's media manipulation, though any thought of this being accidental would quickly be thwarted by Sarah's search history, as during their road trip she had looked up, can 500 milligrams of Benadryl kill a 125-pound woman, and how long does it take to die from hypothermia while drowning in a car? It would also be determined that Jen was heavily intoxicated during the time of the crash, and that the mothers had in fact bought Benadryl while on their road trip and served large amounts of it to their children within their sandwiches, with Sarah herself having taken 42 of the pills, proving that this entire event was in fact orchestrated by Jen and Sarah. The red flags, the warning signs, they were all there, but to those on the front lines of the Hart's propaganda, this was the shock of a lifetime. But between the loving posts, the family pictures, and the heartwarming videos, how much of it was actually real?
All of it?
Well, very little, if any.
Very little.
Following the murders, it would be heavily theorized that most, if not all, of the photos and videos on Jen's social media were in fact staged, with one cameraman who had photographed the family stating that Jen does this thing with her Facebook page where the kids pose and are made to look like one big happy family, but after the photo, they go back to looking lifeless. While another witness claimed that the starving kids were given food as a reward for posing for these photos. And on Jen's YouTube channel specifically, it seems to be more of the same, as although these clips may seem so natural and normal, the reality is that they too were planned by Jen, with the smoking gun being one video clip in particular in which she made a critical editing mistake. In it, Jen forgets to edit out the beginning, which shows the kids waiting and staring at her as she directs them on where to stand. Each child has an empty and fearful look in their eyes and are deathly silent. And upon being moved into the perfect position, the children then begin to walk naturally, as if they were being impromptu recorded on just a regular hike. It is an extremely chilling video in which we get to see the influence of Jen behind the camera on full display. And to make it all the more terrifying is the fact that throughout the rest of her channel, the kids often have this same look in their eyes, showing us that even these seemingly unplanned, spur-of-the-moment videos were likely staged and controlled, at least in part, by Jen and Sarah. And the deceit didn't just come from their photos and videos, it also came from their own words. They claimed to love their children, yet it would later be revealed that Sarah had spoken privately to friends about how much she regretted adopting them. They preached veganism on both of their Facebook pages, yet when police searched their home following the crash, they found a fridge full of meat. They stood firmly against racism online, yet given the testimony of Hannah and others around the family, many believe that they were actually themselves racist, with some even labeling them as white supremacists. And finally, they preached peace. Yet for years they beat their children and eventually stole their lives. And if there's any question as to how effective these lies were at making them seem flawless, just listen to what their friends had to say following the crash.
It doesn't compute, I'll tell you. None of that lines up with the people that we all knew. Jen and Sarah really were the kind of parents that I think the world desperately needs.
We weren't duped. That love wasn't fake. They loved their children. They weren't white supremacists. They just were isolated. They were in pain.
Even to this day, with the years of abuse and the final act of murder on full display, some friends of the Harts still remain in denial, refusing to believe that they had been played. Though the reality of the situation is undeniable, with other friends having come to terms with the betrayal by stating things like, "Everyone always loved and supported her to an insane degree, myself included. It's easy to see how fake it all was in hindsight, and knowing them via social media after, everything seemed believable. I looked up to Jen and wanted to be a mom like her one day." And I think the most substantial of all these witnesses was the neighbor of the Harts, a man who got to witness the family when their guard was let down, and look past the facade and see them for who they truly were.
You know, there's a lot of people.
Isn't that crazy that the neighbor cared more about the kids than the cops and the police and everybody else, including Hart's friends and family? That's so crazy and so sad. Like, the neighbors care more about the kids than the police. Like, that is like so sad.
Online saying that they were beautiful people, and at some time they may have been, but that is not what we saw next door.
But as the story comes to a close, there is one detail that still needs to be addressed, and it's perhaps the most off-putting of all. Earlier it was mentioned that Devante was very much the star of the show on Jen and Sarah's social media. He was clearly the best actor of the bunch, and given that essentially every post seemed to include him, or just straight up be centered around him, it's not hard to see that he was easily the favorite child of the mothers. And why is this important to mention now? Well, because his body has never been found. Despite an exhaustive search, Devante's remains have never been discovered, not even a single bone fragment, leaving some convinced that the Harts allowed him to run away and start a new life, as after all, he was the favorite, while others believe that he may have actually been killed before the crash, as perhaps the mothers had taken his life upon discovering once again that he was out begging for food, with his body being buried somewhere else, though to this day, his true whereabouts remain a mystery. And despite his missing body, a judge would later rule that he likely died within the car alongside his family, which is most likely the case, though some still aren't convinced, as if it were any other child it might be easier to accept, but the fact that it was him, the golden child, just makes it all so particularly haunting. Looking back at the Jen Hart channel, now with her entire family having perished by her own hands, is indescribably dark, and it represents one of the most unique and disturbed forms of manipulation that I have ever seen on this site. And knowing the long troubled history of this family makes it no surprise to me that something of this nature ended up happening. But that's all thanks to hindsight. At the time, if you wanted to know about the Hart family, this is what you would find.
How about that?
Wholesome family moments that seem just like the other millions of accounts here on YouTube, that in actuality were carefully orchestrated pieces of a fictitious story that Jen and Sarah were crafting, a story that would only be exposed when it was already too late. I want to give a huge shout out to my gold tier.
Okay, guys, so in my opinion, about Devante, I think that's how you pronounce his name again. I think more than likely he probably passed away. Like, I have a feeling that he already passed away in the car crash, and his body unfortunately got swept away in the ocean. I don't want to say that, but he could be alive. But I don't think so. Like, he probably was killed. His body probably swept away in the ocean somewhere. And it's just unfortunate. Unfortunate. I can never pronounce that word. That the police just didn't help the kids. Like, I mean, everybody failed those kids. Like, everybody failed those kids except for the neighbors. I could tell that the neighbors tried really hard to, like, see the kids were fed, because the kids kept on going back to them, and the neighbors kept calling the police, but the police, they probably didn't care. Like, it's just so sad, especially when Devontae was crying in the police officer's arms, and the police, that moment, the police officer probably knew, probably didn't know, but I'm thinking that the police officer didn't know, and it's just sad. I'm guessing Devontae was crying like real tears because he was hugging the police officer. He was thinking about, please help us, please help me. I don't know what Devontae was thinking. Why? I wish they could, like, got saved, but it's just a very sad case. Like, rest in peace to those kids. Like, it's just very sad to hear stuff about abusive parents, abusive boyfriend, girlfriends, parents, grandparents, family members, friends. It's just sad. But anyways, hope you guys enjoy. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment. And I also want to say this. I also know that this picture with Devontae was hugging the police officer. I looked it up. It was on Photos with Disturbing Backstories. It was on another website back in like 2019 that I was looking at it. I mean, I was so involved looking at this case. Like, I was wondering what happened in that picture. And that's when I started to, like, get interested, and I saw, like, a disturbing photo of the kids naked, and their bodies were, like, it was practically skeletons. It was like very disturbing on Facebook. I don't know if it's, like, still there. I mean, it was on YouTube. I don't know if the picture is still there, but you can find it, I think. But it just has, like, the kids being naked and playing. What was they playing? They probably wasn't, but it's like a very disturbing photo that was from Facebook. But yeah, it's just sad. But anyways, hope you guys watch this, and I don't know what to say. But anyways, I'll see you guys next time, and thank you all for watching.